I found a frightened alien woman hiding in my cabin. She expected the worst. The growling came from inside the supply closet. I had been back from the trail for less than 10 minutes. Boots still wet, jacket still on, and something in my cabin was breathing. I could hear it behind the closet door. Low, shaking, irregular, not the breathing of something dangerous, the breathing of something terrified. I picked up the hatchet from beside the wood stove, not because I wanted to use it. Bears had broken into cabins 3 times this season already, and the nearest road was 40 minutes away. A man alone in the mountains learns fast that prepared is not the same as aggressive. I pulled the closet door open. She was pressed into the far corner behind my winter coats, knees pulled to her chest, 4 fingers spread flat against the wall on each side of her like she was trying to push herself through it. Her skin was the color of ash after a fire. Her eyes were enormous, pale gold with no white around them at all, and they were locked onto me with an expression that needed no translation in any language across any galaxy. She was waiting to find out how badly this was going to go. I set the hatchet on the floor, slowly, kept my eyes on hers the whole time. She did not run. She did not make a sound. She just watched my hands and kept pressing into the wall. I stepped back 2 paces and sat down on the floor of my own cabin. My name is Cal Merritt. I am 36 years old, former wilderness ranger, currently living in the Canadian Rockies because I like the silence. I have pulled injured elk out of frozen rivers. I have talked panicked hikers back from ledges they had no business climbing. I know what fear looks like. I know you do not rush it, I said, in the calmest voice I had. You can stay in there as long as you want. She did not understand the words, but she heard the tone. The rigid lines in her shoulders shifted, just slightly. I got up and put the kettle on. It took nearly an hour before she moved. I sat across the room the entire time, not watching her directly, giving her the side of my face instead of the full weight of my attention. I heard the rustle of coats, heard her breathing slow. When I looked over, she had moved to the closet doorframe, still inside it, still ready to retreat, but looking at the room now instead of just at me. There was a small device behind what might have been her ear. It was about the size of a coin, cracked along one edge, and it flickered with a faint blue light every few seconds. A translator. I had seen pictures of them in the news briefings after the compact made contact with Earth. I had not paid much attention at the time. Politics had never been my strong subject. I slid a mug of hot water with a tea bag in it across the floor toward her, not close enough that she had to come to me for it, just within reach if she chose. She stared at it for a long time. Then she picked it up with both hands and held it against her chest, and something in her face changed in a way I could not name but understood completely. The translator crackled. A word came through, broken, half static. It sounded like why. I said, because you looked cold, static. Then, faintly, something on her side of the device, then static again. We sat like that through most of the night. By morning her name had made it through the translator. Sova. She was a Valoon, a species I had never heard of, from a region of space so far from our solar system that the distance itself meant nothing to me. She had been a cartographer's apprentice on a survey vessel. She liked measuring things, mapping the gaps between stars, filling in the blank spaces on charts that had never been touched by her people before. 3 weeks ago, raiders had taken her ship. She told me about it in fragments, the translator catching maybe half her words and dropping the rest into silence. A group called the Karath, operating on the edges of the Compact's territory where enforcement was slow and justice was a concept people talked about without expecting it to arrive. They had taken her crew apart piece by piece, separated everyone, catalogued them like cargo. She had escaped during a transfer somewhere over northern Canada. An emergency pod, a crash landing she should not have survived. 4 days in the forest on a twisted ankle, eating nothing, hiding from sounds she could not identify. She had found my cabin, broken the latch on the back window, which explained the draft I had noticed and ignored. She had not meant to still be there when I came home. She had only meant to get warm. When she heard my boots on the porch, she had gone into the closet because there was nowhere else to go. I asked her why she had not called out when I came in, why she had not tried to get my attention. The translator took a long moment with her answer. The Karath told us, she said. Her voice, even through the device, had a texture like wind through tall grass. They told us that if we escaped into human territory, the humans would keep us. They said humans do not return what they find. They said humans are the most violent species in the compact and that we would be better off staying where we were. I looked at her for a while. Who told the Karath what humans are like? I asked. She did not know. Right, I said. I would guess it was not a human. Something moved in her gold eyes, not quite understanding, not quite doubt. something between the two that had not existed there before. I made breakfast, eggs and toast and coffee. I did not know if she could eat any of it. She could not, it turned out, at least not safely, but she watched me eat with a focused attention that reminded me of the way my sister's kids watch television, taking everything in, filing it somewhere. Her ankle needed wrapping. I told her what I wanted to do before I touched it, and then I waited until she nodded. She had a nod. I had not expected that. It turned out the Valoon had evolved a similar gesture through a completely different history, which I found remarkable and said so, and her expression did a thing I was starting to recognize as the beginning of something like warmth. I wrapped her ankle carefully. She watched my hands the entire time. When I finished and sat back, she looked at me with an expression I understood exactly. She had expected the help to cost something. She was trying to calculate what. "It does not cost anything," I said. "You were hurt. It needed wrapping, that is all." The translator labored over that for a moment. Then her head tilted and she said something that came through as, "That is not how it works." "How does it work where you are from?" I asked. "Not like that," she said. I called my sister Kate on day 2. Kate works as a liaison at a compact diplomatic office in Calgary. She is sharper than me, more politically connected, and significantly less patient with situations that have no clear procedure. Her first response after I explained was, "Cal, do you have any idea how complicated this is?" "She needs help," I said. "She needs official processing and a diplomatic escort and she is sitting in my kitchen with a twisted ankle and she has not eaten a real meal in 4 days. Tell me about procedure after that." Kate went quiet. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. "Is she safe right now? With me? Yes. I mean, is she in danger from outside?" I looked at the burn marks along the base of Sova's throat that I had been carefully not asking about. "Possibly," I said. "How did they track the pod?" Kate asked. I had not thought about that. I thought about it now. I asked Sova about her uniform. She looked down at the worn gray fabric she was still wearing, the Karath sigil stenciled on the left shoulder. She said something fast that the translator caught as, "I did not think about the signal." I cut the left shoulder panel off with my hunting knife. Sova went very still while the blade was near her. I made the cut small and clean and stepped away with just the fabric. I took it outside and buried it in the snow 60 meters from the cabin, under a rock. When I came back inside, she said, "You knew." "I guessed," I said. She looked at me for a long moment. "How?" "Because if I wanted to find something," I said, "the first thing I would do is make it think it was safe." Something shifted in her face again, not the warmth this time. Something older, heavier, like a weight she had been holding up for a long time was considering whether it could be put down. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, a man arrived at my door. He was neat, professional. He had credentials on a lanyard and a smile that sat in exactly the right place on his face and moved nowhere near his eyes. He said his name was Owen Galt and that he was a compact recovery officer and that there had been reports of a crashed pod in this area and he was just following up with local residents. His credentials said he was stationed at the Geneva office. The Geneva office had been decommissioned 18 months ago. I knew this because my brother-in-law had worked there until the closure and had complained about the severance package for 6 weeks. I kept my face neutral. I said I had not seen anything unusual. I asked if he wanted coffee. He said no. He looked past me into the cabin for just a moment, the way a man looks when he is confirming something rather than searching for it. He thanked me and walked back toward the tree line. I closed the door and looked at Sova. She had heard the voice from the back room where I had quietly asked her to stay, and she was standing in the doorway to the hall with a look on her face that told me everything I needed to know about Owen Galt. I sent Kate 3 words by text. Now. He left. She arrived 53 minutes later with a compact security officer named Priya Dewan who had the kind of quiet competence that makes a room feel steadier just by entering it. Priya took one look at the cut shoulder on Sova's uniform and made a call on her own device in a language I did not understand. Her expression while she made it was the expression of someone who had suspected something for a long time and was no longer surprised to be proven right. Galt was intercepted at the highway. He was not a compact recovery officer. He was a contractor, hired through 2 layers of distance by a Karath logistics operation that had been running tracked retrieval on escaped cargo for years inside compact territory. The credentials were excellent fakes. He had used them successfully 4 times before. He would not be using them again. Sova's surviving crew members were located over the following week. 4 out of 9. The other 5 were still being traced. Sova sat with Priya in my kitchen for 3 hours, going over names and last known locations and details she had been holding in her memory like cargo herself, waiting for a moment when someone might actually want them. I stayed out of the way and made a lot of coffee. She came to find me afterward, standing in the cabin doorway where I was watching the first real snowfall of the season come down through the pine trees. She stood beside me without speaking for a while. The translator on her ear had been repaired by Priya and worked cleanly now. The silence between us was comfortable in a way that surprised me. "You buried the signal," she said finally. "Yes. You knew to do that." "I thought about what I would do if I did not want someone to be found," I said. She was quiet again. Then, the Karath built their whole operation on the idea that no one would help us once we crossed into human space. They used your reputation as a wall. They told us you were the thing to be more afraid of. "And now?" I asked. She looked at the snow for a while. Her gold eyes reflected the gray sky. "And now I owe my life to a man who sat on the floor of his own cabin, so he would not be taller than me." I did not have anything to say to that. "What do I tell them?" she said. "When I go back, my people, what do I say about humans?" The snow fell. A pine branch released its load somewhere in the trees, and the sound came through the cold air, clean and sharp. "Tell them we have been the villain in a lot of stories," I said. "Some of them we earned. But tell them that when a human finds something frightened in the dark, the first thing most of us want to know is what scared it, not how to use it." She was quiet for so long I thought she might not respond. Then she said, "I will tell them about the tea." I looked at her. "You made tea," she said. "You did not know if I was dangerous. You did not know what I was. You sat down on the floor so you would not frighten me further, and then you made tea, and you slid it across the floor and you waited. I have thought about that moment every hour since." She paused. "No one in my culture would have done that. No one in the compact I have traveled through would have done that. We would have called for help or run or defended ourselves. We would not have thought of tea." I did not know what to say. "You are a strange species," Sova said. "You nearly destroyed yourselves a dozen times over and somehow came out of it with the instinct to slide tea across the floor to the unknown thing in the corner." She looked at me with those amber eyes, and something in them was bright in a way I had not seen before. "I think the compact has been reading you wrong for a very long time." She left 2 days later with Priya and a formal diplomatic escort. She turned once at the tree line and raised her 4-fingered hand. I raised mine back. I went inside and washed the mug she had used on that first night, and set it back on the shelf. The snow was still falling. The cabin was quiet in the way I had always liked, that deep mountain silence where you can hear your own heartbeat if you listen for it. I sat down with my coffee and thought about what it must be like to hide in a stranger's closet with nothing left to lose, waiting to find out what kind of world you had landed in. And I thought about how the answer to that question had turned out to be a man who just needed a moment to put the hatchet down. That felt like enough. More than enough, maybe, for one lifetime on one small planet that the rest of the galaxy had already decided it had figured out. We are a strange species, every single one of us. Strange and stubborn, and occasionally, when something frightened finds us in the dark, surprisingly, stubbornly, inconveniently kind. The snow kept falling. I finished my coffee.